How are companies approaching digital transformation? And to speak more about this, we have with us Peter Bendor-Samuel, founder and CEO at Everest Group. Peter, you do have a theory that companies don't actually transform rapidly. In fact, it takes a process about 5 to 10 years. And someone like me, probably a layman, would say, isn't that too slow? Can you please explain, why does it take probably even 5 to 10 years at a time when technology is very rapidly changing today?
Well, let's just take 5 years.
Right.
Okay, so change is difficult. Well, let's talk about the kind of change they're making. So what I think we're referring to here is changing business model change,
yes,
where companies are looking to get a competitive advantage and come out, and fundamentally change who they are so they can compete better. Mm-hmm. And that is, I know of very few instances where that is done quickly. Mm-hmm. But let me just illustrate that. Let's just take the champions of change, which are the VCs.
Yes.
Okay. So you hear about these VCs. The normal VC, before they really hit and get the business model right, is 3 to 5 years, and they change what they're doing. They normally pivot at least once or twice within that. Mm-hmm. So if the smallest companies, the most nimble companies, are taking 5+ years to get their business model right, and with their lack of complexity and their single-minded focus, then just think of the enormity of change for mature companies to do something.
Right. Also, you've taken the example of Accenture and IBM to prove what you're saying. Can you explain through the example of Accenture probably, how have they ruthlessly gone about bringing this digital transformation?
So let's just set the stage for Accenture. Right. So Accenture has, I think, demonstrated they have become not only a leader but the leader in the digital space. Yes. Right, and I think there's little doubt about that. But that didn't happen overnight. Quite a few years ago, they recognized the potential for digital, right? And they started laying the foundations. And they recognized that this pivot into digital, or what they call about the rotation to digital, was a change in business model. And to do that, it was not just about the technology. It was about broadly how they went to market, where they made profits. The kind of people they had, right? Pretty much everything about, they recognized they had to re-examine everything about them. Right now we can see they're a market leader, but for the last 3 years, they have been systematically driving themselves and engaging with their clients to achieve this change. So we wake up today and say, wait a minute, Accenture appears sort of zooming into the lead, right? And is sort of creating this, capturing huge market share. That process started years ago. And they have been, I think, both persistent and ruthless in that process. They have been willing to attack or look at themselves and reinvent many aspects of they are. They've been prepared to reinvent all aspects. They haven't had to reinvent all aspects. But that's what I mean by being ruthless, right? And they've been committed. That's been driven from the top. They have invested billions in that process, and they have just been completely consistent. Now, they've had setbacks on that process. They've had things that have worked well and things that have not worked well. That has not dissuaded them on that journey. They've pushed through to now emerge as the digital leader.
Right. And earlier, we also had Accenture, one of the global heads, talking to us as well. And what we understood from them, while Indian companies talk about reskilling people, they've done it on a large scale rather than probably laying off large number of people. Do you think that reskilling people is also an important part of that, which comes after business transformation?
Well, I don't know that it comes after business transformation, but it's a part of it. But let me just talk about Accenture now, that is now talking about reskilling. Right. They have evolved their business model so they know what skills are appropriate and what aren't. Right. They both reskill and buy other companies to augment their skills. They can do that at scale now in the latter parts of transformation because they have true conviction of the skills and their need and in what quantity. If they had started doing that at the beginning process, it would have largely a wasted effort and those people would have been very disappointed. But now, after 3 or 4 years of relentless examination of their business model, they now have a real clear view of where their skills are needed. They also know who needs to evolve their skill sets. So at this stage of their evolution, they're now able to, focus on the reskilling in a way that most companies can't. What I see other companies doing, by the way, saying, Accenture is reskilling, I need to reskill, but they haven't gone through that business model change that Accenture has. Likely, a lot of that reskilling will be wasted.
Yeah. In the markets here, there's a lot of concern about Indian IT companies, whether they'll be able to scale up and come up to the new challenges that they are seeing everywhere, and also the fact that whether the cost arbitrage model and the labor arbitrage model that probably they had mastered so well can actually take them in the next 15-20 years. What is your perception about that? What's your view on how you look at Indian companies here and their model?
Well, there's just no doubt that the labor arbitrage model is super mature. In fact, in our facts show that it's actually started to shrink.
Okay.
Right? That doesn't mean to say that India doesn't have a starring role in this new digital workplace. So what's going on here is in the digital model, we have a different business model, a different talent model, a different way we make, do business. That doesn't mean to say that that business won't be done from India,
right.
Okay? But it does mean to say that the pyramid factory model that has been so developed to perfection by those people in India won't need to change.
Right.
So that model is going to continue to compress and shrink. The real question is, can these firms master the new business model, right? So my belief is that there is no other place on earth that has the quantity of engineering and talent that India does, right. and we're going to need that talent to do the work. So I'm sort of very optimistic on much of this work being done out of India, right? I'm not optimistic that the current business model it is for sure that the current arbitrage model and business sold primarily on arbitrage first, that's going to continue to shrink. The issue here is the nature of work will change. We're going to go from a Lego system where we have a factory where we take pieces, assemble them for a project, and then disassemble them so they can go to other projects, is going to move to a persistent model where we're going to have a team focused continuously, the same team, on the same journey. That's a very different business model. The way you price for it is different, the way you run for it, the margin structure is going to be different, our ability to inject a IP into that and get paid for that IP is different. I just talked about a really different way of doing things.
Right. But will this all mean more consolidation in the market? Every
time we have one of these market changes, we restructure the market. So the last time this happened was really the last wave of this size was when labor arbitrage came in. So we kind of noticed that really in 2000. It was well underway before. And that caused a very significant restructuring of the legacy players. Really, there are only 3 legacy players left from that era, right? Major players. Yeah. Now, whether or not there will only be 3 arbitrage players 10 years' time remains to be seen. I think it's very hard to believe that we're not in for a very significant industry restructuring, some of which will mean that the existing players will not be able to make the pivot. Right. Yeah, they will then consolidate, right. And those that do make the pivot will have a lot of funds, and they may wish to consolidate, or they may wish to change it. So I think this industry is going to restructure, right. And there will be fewer arbitrage players in the future than there are today. Right. Just like it's happened in the last 2 waves.
Right. One final question, and this is a question that we are asking all founders and CEOs. How do you rescale yourself? When you look and when you lead large teams, and do you feel that as a leader, do you feel the urgent need in today's world where computing and technology is changing so fast that you need to acquire a new skill probably every 6 months or 1 year? Is there something personally that you would like to share with us?
Well, so if your question is how do I apply that lesson to myself? Yeah. Look, it's the thing that keeps me up at night, right? My ability to lead our organization is my ability to stay current and to continue to evolve. Now, the kind of skills as a CEO that you're learning is you're not going and learning Java or the latest language, right. But you're trying to educate yourself around these new business models. You're trying to open your mind, yes. and think differently, be open to possibilities. Mm-hmm. And that is actually, you have to be completely ruthless with yourself. Yeah. All right? You have to continue to say, what is it that I currently believe that needs to change or be prepared to change.
Right.
And quite frankly, that is hard.
Right.
All change is hard.
Right.
And I think if you're being with yourself or your organization, you have to be both relentless and ruthless in doing that.
So does that involve taking up some new courses or speaking to younger people in the organization? How do you do it on a practical basis?
Well, I think you read widely.
Right.
You talk to new and different people.
Right.
So for example, in my situation, I've spent a lot of time recently engaging with academics around AI.
Right.
That wasn't something I was doing a few years ago.
Yes.
That is quite challenging. These guys are really bright, but they really think in a different way than I do.
Right.
So I have to both learn how they think and have to be able to digest what they're doing.
Right.
So that's a big investment in time when I'm running a fairly sizable organization in multiple countries. So it's a decision I make to invest in stretching my mind to be able to do that. So that's an example of what I'm doing. I think that's fairly consistent with many other senior leaders that want to continue to lead their organizations.
Right. On that personal note, Peter, thank you for speaking to us.
You're very welcome. Thank you.